Avengers Doomsday is Marvel's biggest risk since Avengers Infinity War and Endgame.
Already as like a 2.5 or 3 hour film? Do you think it's going to be one of those?
If I were a betting man, I would say the first one is 2.5 and the second one's 3 hours.
And I know you could argue that Marvel has taken risks since. You could point out Falcon and the Winter Soldier as a major gamble, since that was the first time Marvel introduced a black Captain America on the big screen. But I wouldn't really call that a big risk, because Sam Wilson becoming Captain America was something Marvel has been setting up for a long time. That story goes all the way back to Captain America the Winter Soldier in 2014. The groundwork was already there. Doomsday is different. This is Marvel's first real attempt to tie every major plot line of the Infinity Saga together, and that's not an easy task for anyone. The movie isn't just a sequel, it's Marvel's attempt to pull together nearly a decade of fractured storylines, dozens of characters, and an audience that hasn't even been watching everything. And that really raises an important question. Is Marvel doing too much? You see, the core problem here is pretty simple. Marvel has been releasing too many movies and too many shows. And this really all started in January 2021 with the release of WandaVision. That was the moment Marvel officially committed to releasing both Disney Plus series and theatrical films that all mattered equally in the same overarching story. At first, this seemed like a great idea. It was fresh, it was ambitious, but over time it became a problem. Marvel wasn't just asking audiences to go to theaters anymore. Now you also needed a Disney Plus subscription and to keep up with everything happening in the MCU. And not only that, they were releasing projects constantly. There was no breathing room. The audience never really got a chance to miss Marvel. And that led to two big issues. First, superhero fatigue. And second, something arguably worse. Marvel couldn't keep up with itself anymore. The quality became inconsistent. And once not everything Marvel released was automatically good, the audiences started to split. Now you have two Marvel audiences. There's the core fan base, the people like you and me, the people that deeply care about Marvel and DC and superhero storytelling in general. We're willing to go the extra mile. We'll watch everything, even when it's not great, because we understand the bigger picture. But then there's the general audience. These are people who don't feel obligated to watch every single movie or series. They're comfortable skipping projects, and that's where Marvel starts to run into a serious problem. Because Avengers Doomsday has to work both groups at the same time. Doomsday has to tie together everything Marvel has introduced during the Multiverse Saga, even though a large portion of the audience hasn't been keeping up. And there has been a lot going on in the Multiverse Saga. Marvel is now in a position where they're not just continuing stories, they're also aware that many people don't know who these characters are. So in a way, they have to reintroduce the characters as if it's the first time we're meeting them. And when you actually stop and think about how many characters have been introduced in the past couple years, it's overwhelming. This is something the Infinity Saga never had to deal with. Back then, Marvel was mostly just releasing movies, and that made things easier for audiences, both hardcore and casual viewers, because Marvel felt like an event. The story progression was clear and it was linear. We start with Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America in 2008 to 2011. Then the Avengers were brought together as a team. Simple. After that, each character went on their own journey, Tony dealing with his anxiety in Iron Man 3, Steve discovering Bucky's alive in the Winter Soldier, and Thor doing whatever he was doing in the Dark World. Then they came back together in Age of Ultron. It was straightforward, easy to follow. The Multiverse Saga is the complete opposite. I honestly wouldn't even know where to begin to map out its progression. There are so many movies and Disney Plus shows that it feels like multiple timelines happening all at once. Characters are introduced and then abandoned. When was the last time we even heard of the Eternals? I mean, these are massive cosmic beings with godlike power, many of whom are still alive and existing in the MCU, and yet we've barely acknowledged them since their movie. The only real reference we've gotten was a celestial sticking out of the earth, being mentioned in Captain America Brave New World, and even then the Eternals themselves weren't addressed. Infinity War worked because we didn't need to do homework. Doomsday on the other hand requires you to watch dozens of Disney Plus shows, and most people just don't care enough to do that. So now Marvel has to walk a very thin line. How do you introduce characters for general audiences as if it's the first time they're meeting them, explaining their backstories and their motivations, without bombarding hardcore fans with exposition about characters we already know? If Avengers Doomsday stops every 10 minutes to explain who someone is, the movie grinds to a halt. But if it doesn't explain enough, casual audiences are completely lost. That's plotline overload. And to really understand how serious this problem is, you have to look at how many unresolved storylines exist in the Multiverse Saga. Kang was positioned as the saga's Thanos replacement, a looming threat across timelines. Quantumania showed him defeated, and even though we know that the controversy around Jonathan Majors is what led to the death of the Kang Dynasty movie, Marvel hasn't fully explained where Kang is, or what his role will be playing forward. Dr. Doom has been introduced now, so we know that he's going to be Kang's replacement, but that doesn't explain what's left unresolved with Kang. In Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, The movie ends with Strange meeting Clea and being told that an incursion has begun. They leave Earth together to fix it, and that plot thread still hasn't been referenced or continued anywhere else. In Loki Season 2, Loki sacrifices his freedom to hold the multiverse together, becoming a godlike figure outside of time. The TVA continues operating, now monitoring Kang variants instead of pruning timelines. None of this has been acknowledged in any films, leaving Loki's faith completely disconnected to the wider MCU. In Shang-Chi, the post-credit reveals that the rings have been sending a mysterious signal into space and other dimensions. Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner have no idea what they are or where they come from, and years later, the signal still hasn't been explained. In Eternals, Arishem abducts several Eternals to judge Earth for stopping the emergence of a Celestial. Since the film didn't perform financially, Marvel seems to have abandoned the Eternals entirely, but that doesn't change the fact that the storyline still exists and needs to be explained. The Young Avengers is clearly being set up, multiple young heroes being introduced across multiple projects and subtly connected, and yet no project has officially brought them together or clarified where that story will pay off. The X-Men are said to be introduced in Avengers Doomsday, and with a decade of X-Men films already existing, Marvel now has to explain which versions of these X-Men we're seeing, and where they come from and who they are, all while juggling everything else. And then there's the question of who are the Avengers exactly? With the Thunderbolts positioned as the new Avengers, what does that mean for Sam Wilson and everyone else outside of the team? And this is me excluding several unresolved plotlines. Do you see how much Doomsday has to do? This movie doesn't just have to tell a story, it has to finish dozens of half-told ones. And even if the story is good, there's only so much time you can actually give each character. It's simple math. The more characters you have, the less time you get to develop each one. Infinity War worked because every character already had a strong foundation. We knew who they were and what they wanted. The movie wasn't introducing Iron Man, it was paying him off. Doomsday, on the other hand, will have to introduce, explain, and continue all at once. Likely it doesn't necessarily have to conclude any storylines because that's what Secret Wars is for. But all of this is happening while Marvel is already dealing with a damaged reputation. Audiences don't have the same faith in the MCU that they used to. Years of inconsistent quality have made people skeptical. They don't feel obligated to show up anymore. Infinity War and Endgame benefited from a decade of goodwill. Doomsday is starting from a position of skepticism. But even with all of that, I honestly still hold on to hope. Because you see, the Russo brothers haven't had too much success with their Netflix projects. Films like The Grey Man and Electric State struggled with world building and character depth. Characters often felt hollow, like they were ideas instead of actual people. But we shouldn't ignore the fact that some of the best MCU movies that have come out in the Infinity Saga came from the Russo brothers. I'm talking about The Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame itself. This tells me something very important. The Russo brothers as directors might struggle with creating worlds and characters from scratch. But when they're giving already existing worlds and established characters with their own histories, and they're asked to adapt those characters, ensemble them, and tell a story with them, they usually excel. So in my opinion, if anyone can handle all this chaos and turn it into something cohesive and fun, it might be them. But the real question is, do you think Marvel can pull this off? Or is the Multiverse Saga already too tangled to fix? Let me know down in the comment section, and as a channel with only 1,000 subscribers, I would appreciate every like and every sub, or feedback if you have any. And thanks for watching.